The Cleveland Browns are set to begin training camp on July 22nd at the Greenbrier in West Virginia, which means it's time to start getting in to training camp positional previews and breakdowns. And we'll start today with the tight ends on your latest Locked On Browns.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends, your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound LGB on the LOB, the Locked On Browns podcast, brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. I am your host, Jeff Lloyd. 7th season here with Locked On Browns, 7th season with Cleveland Browns coverage. And in 7 seasons, we've seen a lot. And I've seen enough to know I've seen too much. And I'm sure you Cleveland Browns fans who have been here for decades and decades all agree with me. I appreciate all the everydayers who make Locked On Browns their first listen every single day. My biggest suggestion to all the new traffic here is to become more like the everydayers. Jump on in, make Locked On Browns your first listen. And the best way to do that is to subscribe to the Locked On Browns YouTube channel. Put your notifications on. And of course, wherever you get your podcast, Locked On Browns, always available and always free. Today's episode of Locked On Browns is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. As we said in the intro, we are going to get a little bit deeper here and start getting a little bit deeper into the positional rooms as the Browns descend July 22nd to the Greenbrier in West Virginia to begin their 2022 training camp practices. For you Browns fans, first one you'll be able to attend will be August 1st in Berea. Decided to start today with the tight end position. Go a little bit different here. We're going to do offense this week. Obviously, the tight ends, the quarterbacks, the running backs, the wide receivers, the offensive line. Next week, we'll flip it over to the defenses. We're going to start getting a little bit more into Browns opponent breakdowns as we go through the month of July. And first of all, I want to make sure everybody's having a safe and happy 4th of July weekend. Always a fun time of the year. It's so amazing how quickly the 4th of July comes. A lot of people view it as the halfway point of summer. Not so much for me here where I live. But, here we are full-fledged in one of the best weekends, no doubt, of the entire calendar. We begin here and with David Njoku. David Njoku about to turn 27 years old on July 10th. It's amazing to think that David Njoku's about to turn 27. And this will be his 7th season within the NFL. Here's a player that was just an absolute raw freak athlete when the Browns first drafted him in 2017, along with Myles Garrett, along with Jabril Peppers. Now, David was drafted out of the University of Miami. At the time at Miami, of course, the program was fledgling. So David, his role was not a lot. They just did not have a lot of talent. But you've seen some of really good things. Rookie year, David Njoku was involved, 4 touchdown receptions. 2018 had a really, really good year with Baker Mayfield in year 2. That's still actually, believe it or not, his career high in yardage was his 2018 season, not his career high in receptions. David Njoku with 4 of his 6 seasons with the Cleveland Browns, 4 touchdown receptions. David Njoku has made amazing strides with his blocking ability, which was one of the questions, obviously, with David Njoku when he was taken out of Miami. Certainly at such a young age, a track guy, a wide receiver a little bit in high school, certainly was a convert to the position. And now you're starting to see the dividends being paid with David Njoku. It's crazy that we talk about David and we talk about his blocking. Back in the day, that was never a discussion we had. We all thought he was just going to be this elite pass catching tight end, and we're going to get to that in a minute. But the strides that's been put in, the onus that's been put in to become a full-fledged number one tight end in the NFL, and all the credit in the world goes to David because he has worked and worked and worked to achieve these milestones to become the blocker that he is now at the position and regarded as one of the better blocking tight ends in the NFL. He's always been, a guy who could contribute and at times dominate as a receiver. We've seen it. Obviously, we saw it early on in his career. Then there was 2019 where it was marred. Then it was 2020 where he was trying to find his way with this new regime, Andrew Berry, of course, Coach Kevin Stefanski, and they had obviously, brought in Austin Hooper at the time. And by the end of that year in 2020, there was no mistake about it. David Njoku was the better tight end. The Browns basically repeated the same thing in 2021, and it was the same thing again. David Njoku was the better tight end. He was the better blocker. If he had gotten the opportunity, he would have been the better receiver, which led to obviously the Browns giving David Njoku a full, long, big money contract extension. A lot of it was with the expectation of David Njoku reaching even greater heights. And, last year, obviously, was 58 receptions, 628 yards, 4 touchdowns. And a lot of people maybe questioning the money that David was given. Now, when you move those numbers up with the understanding that David missed 3 games last year, you're talking about a player that would have given you 70 receptions, 763 yards, and 5 touchdowns. And I think that's going to be the expectation for a player like David this year. This is what with Deshaun Watson, you think that possibly every wide receiver, every tight end should have solid numbers. Whatever their numbers were last year, you think those numbers are going to make a jump here in 2023. A, because it's 17 games of Deshaun Watson. B, because of the focus that the offense is probably going to throw the ball more than any of us have been familiar with, probably more than I've ever been familiar with in my 7 seasons covering the Cleveland Browns. David Njoku has become an all-around solid tight end. I will always say we're not going to mention him in the same breath as Travis Kelce. And when we're talking about any other tight end in the NFL, we're going to say the same thing. We're not going to mention any other tight end in the NFL in the same breath as Travis Kelce. It's a one-man show. It's basically Travis Kelce and the Kelceyettes as far as the NFL tight ends are concerned. But David Njoku has made fantastic strides. He has become a star player at the position. He has become a more than average blocker at the position. And now keep in mind, this was a guy who was just a raw athlete when the Browns originally drafted him out of the University of Miami. All the work has been put in. All the effort has been put in. Doesn't miss things. Hey, it's the team offense takes a trip to Sean. David Njoku goes. The work is always done. Physical freak, athletic freak, and the Chief has shown that he can get it done. And I expect to see the biggest season from the Chief here in 2023 when there are all these weapons on the field. When that happens, what usually happens, folks? They usually end up sleeping on the tight end. We're going to move it on here. We're going to give a couple thoughts here about Jordan Akins and Harrison Bryant and how they're going to fit in here in the 2023 season. We'll get to what is the rest of the roster. Good Lord. When we get to segment 3 here, and also talk a little bit about what is the future of the tight end room for the Browns, because it does get a little murky if you start to look at the Browns tight end position after the 2023 season. I am Jeff Lloyd. I appreciate you all being along here for the ride on your latest Locked On Browns. These days, every potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Look, you need people to come help your company. One of the easiest things you can do is go to LinkedIn Jobs. Put out specifically what you're looking for, what training you're looking for, what education you're looking for, and that way you can flood a very large market and get yourself a large amount of applicants in a very, very quick amount of time. Then you can add your job and the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you are indeed hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you like to interview and possibly hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find your qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Jeff Lloyd, continuing through here, your latest Locked On Browns. Again, I always want to thank everybody who makes Locked On Browns their first listen, whether it is indeed here on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you have notifications on, so when the content drops, you guys are ready to absorb it. Locked On Browns is always available, always free, wherever you get your podcasts. Now, the rest of the room. Now, it was a little bit murky as far as where the Browns were standing with Harrison Bryant, certainly after the signing of free agent tight end Jordan Akins. Jordan Akins, a player who had a history with Deshaun Watson with the Houston Texans. Jordan Akins actually had a nice statistical year for a very, very bad Houston Texans team last year. Jordan Akins is also the guy who caught basically the short mid-range Hail Mary, which cost the Houston Texans the opportunity at acquiring the #1 overall pick. Jordan Akins comes in here. He's on a 2-year contract. When I say 2-year contract, folks, it's a 1-year contract. If the Browns want to move on with Jordan Akins in 2024, it's a dead cap hit of like $315,000, which isn't much at all. This is a guy who can come in here. He's an athletic tight end. He can create some mismatches along with David Njoku. The blocking is not necessarily what you're hoping for, and we'll get to that a little bit, later in this segment about some things I think you might expect to see from this team in obvious running situations. But Jordan Akins has been a player, and the fact that he does have a history with Deshaun Watson, he comes in here understanding of a role that he's going to have, but also comes in here with familiarity with a quarterback that he's had some success with, and certainly had success with other quarterbacks with the Houston Texans. But it gives the Browns just another big, tall, athletic guy who can work between the hashes, plays well in the boot game, plays well in that waggle type of game, and has a little bit of yak ability. He can run a little bit after the catch. So something that you can expect as we get to know this player a little bit better as training camp opens. Harrison Bryant, there were some questions as to, certainly after the Akins signing, after the committing big money to David Njoku, where Harrison Bryant stood with this organization. Now, you go back in the day when Harrison Bryant was first drafted. Now, you keep in mind that Harrison Bryant was originally a high school wide receiver, went to college, was made and transformed into a tight end, didn't necessarily play full-time tight end. And when I say play full-time, that wasn't necessarily lined inside all the time as a tight end. You took advantage of the fact, of his height, put him outside a lot. He was able to cook, against guys, using his body to get between the defender and obviously the quarterback, creating passing lanes for, obvious, easy pass receptions. Won the Mackey Award, highly productive statistical player in his time in college. And I think we've seen at times some really good Harrison Bryant. You go to his rookie year, 2 touchdown receptions against Cincinnati Bengals. And there's always times where, teams slept on Harrison Bryant, and the Browns were able to use him like he was used in college. And, the fact that you could put him outside and no, he's not nearly athletic or he's not going to run by any defensive back. But there's not a lot of defensive backs in the NFL who are 6'4". So of course, creates those passing lanes, creates those opportunities for easy throws for your quarterback. This can be seen, and we will see the way this works here in 2023, because I think you're going to see some bright spots. I think you're going to see some moments from Harrison Bryant, because again, when Harrison Bryant is on the field, there could be David Njoku on the field. There could be Nick Chubb. There could be Amari Cooper. There could be Donovan Peoples-Jones. There could be Elijah Moore. All these players on the field, most of the time when Harrison Bryant is going to be on the field, he is going to be basically the least likely option to beat you if you were viewing it from a defensive mind. You don't think Harrison Bryant's going to be the one to beat you. So therefore, the coverage is going to go elsewhere. The focus, the onus is going to go elsewhere. But Harrison Bryant and his ability as a receiver has an opportunity to make plays for this team. Now you get to the contract. It was murky. Was he going to be a part of this team in 2023? Was he not going to be a part of this team in 2023? Similar to Jordan Elliott, the Browns went to Harrison Bryant in his camp and said, let's find a way financially to make this work. We want him here. Maybe we're not ready to commit to the money that he's due. So as opposed to, making this awkward situation where this player who's going into his free agent year has to start anew now, let's get something down. Everybody on the same page. We want you here. We would like a little break on the money. It all did work out. So Harrison Bryant is here for year 4, hopefully in the efforts of Harrison Bryant to put together a nice statistical season and hopefully maybe cash in somewhere else. We'll see. Does it end up being Cleveland if Harrison Bryant can show more strides as a blocker? Heck, if, obviously Jordan Akins can show some signs as a blocker, the Browns would probably be in a great situation to want one, if not both of them back for 2024. Again, we'll get to the future of this room a little bit more here in segment 3. Now, this brings up to what I was, discussing a little bit earlier. You look at this room and the way it is currently constructed. Normally, for a lot of teams in the NFL, your best blocking tight end is not necessarily your number 1 tight end. Normally, if your number 1 tight end is that good of a receiver, you are going to bite the bullet. You are going to understand. You are going to accept the fact that he is not traditionally the inline blocker that you would hope that he could be. But I think the Browns are in a coup with this where they have the true number 1 tight end who contributes just as much as a blocker as he does as a receiver. So you can kind of let it go with your number 2 tight end. You can kind of let it go with your number 3 tight end. But as we saw with the Browns in the 2022 season, we saw James Hudson work in as a blocking tight end. And to his credit, James Hudson did a pretty good job. There were times he put James Hudson in motion and just annihilating defensive backs who were on the edge, and certainly had some fun with it. I think the Browns could continue with that here in 2023. And there could be a situation where it's short yardage. They truly want to run the ball. So maybe you don't have Akins on the field. Maybe you don't have Harrison Bryant on the field either. James Hudson can do these type of things. You've already seen it. You've already asked him to. He's already shown you that he can do it. But maybe also Dawand Jones gets some early reps where he's not necessarily going to play the offensive line, and all hopes are that he's not going to take a lot of offensive line reps here this year. But you still want to get his feet wet. You want to get his appetite wet. You want to get him acclimated to NFL speed, NFL power of some of these guys. So a way the Browns can do this is to use James Hudson and Dawand Jones as tight end 2, tight end 3 in short yardage, in goal line, where the Browns need to pick up a yard, or you got 1st and goal on the 3, and you just want to start moving dudes around. And this wets the whistle of these young players as they continue their developmental path to hopefully one day be starters for this team. This is an advantage the Browns have and can cover up for the fact that Jordan Akins, Harrison Bryant are not great inline blockers. Well, you know what? We'll just bypass that, and I'll throw a couple extra offensive linemen on the field. I'll have them be tight end eligible, and we will get the yards we need to get. We will get the rushing TDs we need to get by doing just that. I am Jeff Lloyd, host here at Locked On Browns. Appreciate you all for being along for the ride. We're going to get to our final segment here, talk about what is the future of the Cleveland Browns tight end room after the year 2024. We know one guy that's going to be here. We're not necessarily sure who the rest of those guys in that room will be. We'll discuss that next. This is Jeff Lloyd, host of the Locked On Browns podcast. Appreciate everybody for being along for the ride. Locked On Browns, you guys, and the efforts you guys give and the backing you guys give here by being the everydayers, making Locked On Browns your first listen. A lot of big media outlets are going away from team-specific daily coverage, which is just fine for us here at Locked On. This is what the premise on what we were built. This is the premise of what Locked On Browns was built. So I appreciate you all for being along for the ride. Locked On Browns is always available, always free wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. Now, we talked about where the Browns are as far as their star tight end, David Njoku. We talked about what will be the rest of the tight end room on NFL game days. Of course, Jordan Akins. Of course, Harrison Bryant going into year 4 now. It's crazy to think about guys like him and Jordan Elliott. These are the original draft choices of Andrew Berry. These guys are going towards their 4th year with the Cleveland Browns. Some of them with the hopes to resign here long term. Some of them, we'll see the way it works out and how long their career in Cleveland or the NFL in general continues to go. The rest of the room at the tight end position, Zaire Mitchell-Payton, obviously a player we haven't seen anything from. Thomas Greene is another player. Obviously, we haven't seen anything from. I think at some point this summer, the Browns certainly would be looking to pursue a raw, developmental, maybe athletic type. If he has a blocking background, that would be great. But I do think if the Browns are in the position, they would be looking for someone at the tight end position that they could groom as a stash on the practice squad. It looks like there will be 2 open holes on what would be the game day 53 for 2024. As I mentioned earlier, Jordan Akins only has $315,000 as a dead cap hit in 2024. So by no means has Jordan Akins promised anything for the 2024 season. Harrison Bryant, on paper, his contract ends when the Browns' 2023 season ends. So, and the Browns, this is where it's gotten a little tricky because the last 2 NFL drafts, they've been pretty good as far as the tight end position. And you guys know, with all the draft coverage we've done, with all the mock drafts that we put up, every year we kept trying to find a tight end or 2 that would suit the Cleveland Browns going further. The Browns didn't dip their toe in the 2022 class. They didn't dip their toe in the 2023 class. Certainly seems strange because it certainly seemed like the Browns needed, and because we know David's here, obviously, there's no question about that. But, you'd like to have some questions answered, or at least potential answers to questions always around within your roster. The Browns don't have a potential answer for tight end 2 in 2024, tight end 3 in 2024. Who knows? Akins, if he plays well, maybe. Harrison Bryant, maybe, but I don't think the Browns are in the position where they're going to want to throw more money at the tight end position after they've already committed a large amount of money to David Njoku. And for anybody who, doesn't know how I feel, I am 100% behind and okay with the money that David Njoku is currently making. So this is going to be interesting how it breaks out, because I think this is a room the Browns are going to be evaluating throughout this season. If Akins and Bryant cannot perform up to what the Browns are hoping they will to perform to, I think the Browns will have their eyes on potential tight end replacements. And again, if you can stash them away on the practice squad, if Harrison Bryant or Jordan Akins somehow, some way are not performing up to snuff, neither one of them is making a large amount of money. If the Browns have to trade them, possibly release them because there is a player they think that brings them more potential for this season or for future seasons, I truly think it's something that they will pursue. We know what the top part of this room is, and that's David Njoku, and that's going to be the big part of this room for the foreseeable future. But we've already talked about both players don't necessarily bring it as far as the run game and blocking. I've already offered you a solution how the Browns can overcome that by playing James Hudson again as a run blocking tight end, maybe even using Dawand Jones as a blocking tight end. These are ways you can maneuver around the fact that these 2 players do not bring a ton in the blocking game. So it's certainly something to consider. The Browns are going to obviously have their short yardage situations. They're going to have their goal line situations. They're going to have their situations where they're trying to close out the clock by running the football. So it's going to need to happen one way or another, whether it's Akins or Bryant, or they're going to have to go, a little bit big. And by big, throwing 600 pounds on the field and Jones and Hudson to help out. This is a room that is very, very much going to be different at this point a year from now than the way it is now. I don't think Akins or Bryant are going to do anything to wow. I think they're going to have their moments. I think they're going to contribute, but I don't think either one of these players are going to give you anything that you're going to say they're not replaceable. And this is the key, is either one of them now you're talking to go further with them, maybe $2 million, or the Browns now in 2024 could maybe dip into that draft class, talking about spending maybe a 3rd round pick, a 4th round pick, and you're paying not even half, even more than half less than what you would play to a player like Jordan Akins or Harrison Bryant. So it's certainly a room that's got a lot of maneuverability, a lot of changes coming to the Cleveland Browns tight end room. So these guys hopefully can contribute, Akins and Bryant, and give this team all that they are hoping for at the tight end position here in 2023, with the possibility of 1, 2 maybe staying, or 1, 2 most likely moving on after the 2023 season. So the Browns have a lot of work to do. And as far as that, and questions hopefully can be answered to maybe clear this up for Andrew Berry and his staff. And the opportunity is certainly there. These guys will have an opportunity to produce through the passing game. There should be a lot of opportunities for anybody who's a wide receiver or tight end to produce in the passing game. So it'll be interesting to see the way that plays out. But we all know the way Andrew Berry works. Andrew Berry always has his eyes on this season, but Andrew Berry always has his eyes on future seasons. So we've gotten to obviously some good stuff here today. David Njoku, the year of the Chief, the King Chief, all hail the Chief. I think David Njoku, we're about to see the best season of David Njoku's career here in 2023. Health permitting, we're talking about a player that statistically should produce within line with the top 5 tight ends in the game. Jordan Akins, Harrison Bryant, it's a make or break year. If it's not a big year for either one of those guys with Cleveland, the question might be is where will either of them be in 2024 as the Browns maybe look to get cheaper within the room and look to get younger within the room. Future of the room is murky, but one of the things that can be answered is by using James Hudson again as a blocking tight end, and maybe even using Dawand Jones as a blocking tight end as well. I am Jeff Lloyd, host here of Locked On Browns. Make sure you follow me at Jeff_LJ_Lloyd. The show at Locked On Browns, follow back account. I appreciate all of you, the everydayers who make Locked On Browns your first listen every day. The numbers continue to soar. I could not be more thankful. And let's not kid ourselves, folks. Here, July 22nd, the Browns begin training camp. Beginning of August, we got the Hall of Fame game, putting Joe Thomas into the Hall of Fame. So I hope you're all enjoying your 4th of July weekend, but football season is coming, and it is coming fast. This has been your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound. LGB on the Yellow B. Let's go, Browns.